In 2010, 11 bodies, 9 women, 1 man, and 1 toddler were found along the Gilgo Beach on the South Shore of Long Island, New York. The women were all active S workers who advertised on Craigslist. Suffolk County Police Department believed that these serial killings were done between 1996 and 2011. 3 of the bodies remain with no ID, while the families of Shannon Gilbert, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Karen Vergata demand answers and justice. Rex Heuermann is now being labeled as the notorious Lisk or Long Island serial killer, as evidence is piling against him for the cases of Amber Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Melissa Bartholomew. Did the killer intentionally use Craigslist as their hunting ground? What was their fascination on tattoos? Did Rex Heuermann act alone? Or are there more individuals that are waiting to be caught? Hey y'all, hey, we are back with another SW in True Crime video. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Thank y'all so much for all the love and support on the previous video. If y'all haven't checked it out now, this is time you can check it out. It is no linked, what am I talking about? It is not linked to this case today, but you can go ahead and check me out there. I tried to do, the best possible way of making sure the victims get light and, finally get told the stories that we don't really hear. Before I just start off this case, I want to give my condolences to the family, and I mean absolute no disrespect in what I'm about to say. This case is going to be a little bit different, being that this is a huge serial killer case. My previous serial killer case was the West Mesa bone collector case, if you haven't checked that out. And I'm actually gonna be talking about that a little bit in this case. So if you want to know a little bit what I'm talking about, you can go ahead and click out and see there. But this is my second serial killer case, so I am going to be going in a chronological order, giving the background of each of the victims, because we have a lot of victims in this case. Please brace yourselves, y'all, please. There's a lot of information, I can't stress that enough in this case. If you would like to join the conversation, I put some of my links that I found helpful below. There's also amazing YouTube videos on that, and I'll put that as well below. This is an ongoing trial, so information is honestly being released as time goes on. I believe his trial was last month, and there was really no information on that, so it really is kind of a closed case as they try to release things. So I'm gonna do my best to tell y'all what really is going on, tell y'all the tea. I already know that they barely give any, information about the backgrounds of S workers, especially when they learn that you do S work. So I really did some deep diving to really give the best possible story of all of these beautiful human beings. Thankfully, the families did provide adequate information to different sources, so I could compile a lot for you guys. Again, it's extremely dangerous for everyone, not only S workers. Let's begin. Let's get into our next case. Okay, y'all, so this case has a lot of parts. I'm going to do my best to keep everything in order. I'm gonna go in chronological order, being that a lot transpired in this timeline, so please try to keep up with me. Also, everything that I'm saying is my public opinion other than fact that I've researched, which again I put below. Keep it cute in the comments. Please keep it cute. Please be respectful and mindful of the other families. And again, this is my opinion. No action should be taken, from it. Let's get into it. In 2010, police discovered the first set of female remains in bushes along an isolated strip on the property of Gilgo Beach while searching for a missing 23-year-old Shannon Gilbert. Shannon Gilbert, a 23-year-old from Jersey City, New Jersey, who was last seen May 2010. Shannon Gilbert was born to her mother, Mari Gilbert, and father on October 24th, 1986. She also had 3 other siblings, Sherry, Sarah, and Stevie Smith. Actually, the Netflix movie Lost Girls is a depiction of Shannon and the missing and just overall the story of the family. I haven't actually seen it. Let me know if you've seen it in the comments. But yes, it's called Lost Girls on Netflix. Shannon finished high school and knew Pats at the age of 16. Her mother recalls that she wasn't quite street smart, but she indeed was book smart. And honestly, my mother said the same thing about me, so... Shannon was diagnosed with bipolar depression, but stopped taking her medication because she said it gave her the shakes. And I completely agree. We talked about this previously when doctors put you on medications and it got this all list of side effects, life-altering side effects. Who really wants to go through that? So I totally understand that. Well, from a neuroscience or psychology point of view, this could be like having bipolar depression could be from a life-altering, situation in her life, or just honestly a chemical imbalance in the brain. Nevertheless, there was no specific small details about her past or childhood. After graduating in 2002, Shannon later decided to work at a hotel, then to an Applebee's, and even a senior center home. But by 2007, and at the age of 21, she moved to Jersey City with her boyfriend and signed on to an escort agency. So there was some, details about her life as an escort worker, as they always go into a lot of details about, which I feel like there's no reason to go into her horror stories of what a lot of escort workers do on the blade, which on the blade it's on the street. So there's no need to go into that. You already know that there's violence against women, against escort workers, being that we're here now. So I don't feel the need to go into that. But she did have, history with arrest with police regarding full service escort work. In 2009, though, she started to post for herself on Craigslist. On Craigslist, she would charge $200 an hour, and she would keep 2/3, and 1/3 of it would go to her driver, who she hired, who also provided security for her, which is honestly the safest route a lot of full service girlies take, especially when you know your protection or your driver. They say Shannon liked to party, but I feel like we always come on that, or we always see that somewhere, especially with S workers. They like to tie S workers with drugs. But some articles did say that Shannon liked to use, she liked to smoke weed. My girl liked to party, and she did dabble in a little coke, whatever. But reports did say that if she didn't, burn through her habits through the day, sometimes she would come home with, up to $600 or more a night. The extra money allowed Shannon to finally get a place of her own in Jersey City and begin to take online writing classes because she just had the dream of just wanting to be a writer. Reports say that her online college classes was to help her push to get out of work or escorting, but I don't know, because I feel like people always like to say that we need a cop out. Girl, no, we don't. In this case, which people will say she needed something to run to instead of S-work, there's no indication of where this was survival S-work for her. Survival S-work is where she needed to do S-work to survive, but in this case, we don't have anything like that. And I just really hate when people like to equate S-work with survival S-work. Some people just do S-work because they want to. But Shannon liked to visit her family. She loved to share the wealth. She loved to, take her sisters on shopping trips. She was such just a family-oriented person. She would give lavish gifts again to her nieces and nephews. And Mari, who worked at Walmart at the time, knew where her daughter was getting the money from, but she just needed a way to talk to her about it. Mari says she told Shannon, don't do it, stop, just move back home. But Shannon honestly looked at her mom and refused and said, Mom, I literally do nothing and I make thousands. And this is why I feel like this is not the case of survival S-work. No. On May 1st, 2010, at approximately 2 a.m., Shannon arrived in a dark SUV at a wood house in a gated community in Oak Beach, Long Island. This community is about a few miles from Fire Island. The house belonged to a 46-year-old Joseph Brewer, an unemployed financial advisor who recently separated from his wife. A few hours earlier, Joseph had responded to Shannon's ad on Craigslist. The most thorough account of what occurs next comes from her driver, Shannon's driver, Michael Pack, who was with her the night of and the previous night. It would be 2 days after this occurrence of what we know with Joseph Brewer that Shannon's boyfriend calls Cherie and tells her that she didn't come home. Cherie recalls that she just immediately felt fear or just immediately began to worry because she could hear how fearful he was over the phone. It was the call that her whole family was dreading, knowing that Shannon was doing S work. Her sisters recall that Shannon just felt that, it could happen, but it would never happen to her. But honestly, be for real, y'all. Who thinks the worst in any situation? That's like a police officer going in and expecting something bad to happen the first day. Like, be for real. The Gilberts say they immediately filed a missing person report, but y'all already know how they are. They received nothing. No news, nothing at all. They drove 140 miles from their homes, from upstate New York to Oak Beach, Long Island, to go find Shannon or go find some clues themselves since the police weren't helping. But by then, Shannon had been missing for 8 days. So the sisters said they went to all the houses knocking, asking each neighbor, have you seen my sister? If you have, give me the details. They literally were just going door to door, old school way, trying to find what happened to Shannon. They spoke to over a dozen witnesses and homeowners, trying to put the pieces together of where and what happened to Shannon. They learned that her driver and her arrived around in that area on May 1st, 2010 at around 2 a.m. in the gated community. Cherie recalls that the driver, Michael Pack, dropped Shannon off and she was there for quite some while in Oak Beach. And for some reason, Shannon just began to panic. Shannon's sister believes that something awful had to happen in that house for that distress 911 call. And this call, which I got from this YouTube, I will say, please prepare yourself because it really took me back and it had me just like on edge. So I want you to prepare yourself.
No, stop it, please. Stop it, please. Please stop it. Please stop it. No.
In the 23-minute 911 phone call released by police from 2010, we hear Shannon Gilbert go from scared for her life to confused.
Why are you calling me by my name?
What's the matter? Are you okay?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me?
Let's go back to Manhattan.
Police say that's the voice of Michael Pack, Gilbert's bodyguard.
At some point during the meeting with Brewer, Shannon reportedly began acting irrational.
Please, can you shut the door?
No, time to go.
Please, something's going to happen to me.
There's nobody outside. You're okay, right?
After that, Gilbert runs out of the house. She's the thing we hear on the call is Gilbert running again. Police say they believe Gilbert ran into this marsh in Gilgo, which would have looked like this at the time that night.
This is the call that Shannon made to 911 inside the client's house. It was at 4:51 a.m. Michael Pack stayed in his car while Shannon met with her client. During the encounter, Shannon reportedly began to act irrationally, prompting the client to get the driver to get Shannon to leave. After initially refusing to comply, Shannon began to run outside. She knocked on several doors and spoke to 2 neighbors before disappearing into the night.
Starts knocking on people's doors. Those people call 911 too.
43 the Bayou. Some woman is knocking at my door. She says she's in danger.
Still on the 911 call, Shannon fled the house and immediately ran to the home of a Gus Coletti, who was a longtime resident of Oak Beach. So as you can hear in Gus's 911 call, Gus said that it was then that he noticed an Asian man in his 30s driving a black SUV circling around looking for Shannon. It was Michael Pock, her driver. So this prompted Gus to ask Shannon, was she scared of the man in the car? I'm not sure if Shannon ever replied or was she just hysterical, but Gus did say like she was afraid of somebody. Then Gus saw Shannon run underneath his boat in his yard. All of a sudden, he says, she got from under the boat and completely took off. This made Michael Pock follow her. Gus said he yelled for him to stop, but he was still following her. And at that point, Gus called 911. It is now 5:21 a.m. and Shannon ran to another house or home of an Oak Beach resident, Brenda Brennan. And that was the last time that anyone reportedly seen her alive. Shannon Gilbert's disappearance in 2010 triggered the hunt that exposed the larger mystery. Mari Gilbert, in the final years of her life, pressured police to, finally take her daughter's disappearance seriously. She fought tirelessly to make sure that Shannon and the other victims found were not forgotten. Mari remembers the night Shannon disappears and their last phone call. I said, look, Shannon, you coming home is my gift. You don't have to buy me a present. Just come home. I'm guessing that it was her mother's birthday and Shannon was coming home. After hanging up, she texted Shannon, be safe. And immediately after, Shannon responded, I always am. Y'all, some of the same stuff took place with this family, okay? On July 23rd, 2016, tragedy fell upon the family again. Mari Gilbert, the mother of Shannon, was only 52 when she was stabbed over hundreds of times with a kitchen knife by her own daughter, Sarah. She was then bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher, according to court documents. My goodness. Sarah Gilbert, who Ray, the family attorney, said just went through so much emotionally and mentally after the death of Shannon Gilbert. But Sarah Gilbert was sentenced to 25 years to life. As they were searching for Shannon on December 11, 2010, the remains of Melissa Bartholomew, 24, were the first remains to be found on Gilgo Beach. Melissa M. Bartholomew was born April 14, 1985, to Lynn Bartholomew and Mark Splitza, and had a little sister, Amanda Funderburg. She grew up in Buffalo and lived in Texas with her father for some time, but wanted to come back to Buffalo to finish high school at Buffalo South Parks High School in 2003. Melissa got her cosmetology license from Continental Beauty School and later worked in her hometown at a Supercuts. But she wanted to move to New York to find a more glamorous job as a stylist. So in 2007, she did just that. She moved to the Bronx in hopes of finding a better job as a hairstylist. And she eventually one day wanted to own her own beauty salon. Reports say this is when she began to dance or strip on the side as well. Her mother knew what she was doing and honestly just knew she was trying to make money for her own beauty salon. Her parents were worried when she moved away, but they knew that at 4 feet 11, 95 pounds, this petite woman was a spitfire and she was not to be played with. They were very confident that Melissa could take care of herself. Melissa told her mother that she was just dancing at the club, nothing to worry about. But honestly, that was enough to worry Lynn. And honestly, it sounds like my mama too. Lynn recalls telling Melissa, I'm not around the corner like I used to be. It's 8 hours for me to get to you. Her family recalls the last time that Melissa came to visit. They said that Melissa was down because they said Melissa told them that money, wasn't like it used to be. So Lynn told Melissa that, come back home. We even have a job lined up for you. But ultimately, Melissa just didn't want to. Melissa went back to New York. Lynn says she was so stubborn and she was going to do anything she put her mind to. So before Melissa could leave, they told her to be careful, and they honestly hoped for the best. Melissa rented a $700 basement apartment on Underhill Avenue in Tremont, which is basically like a Bronx neighborhood. Again, we know that she told her parents that she was doing cosmetology as well as stripping, and her landlord, which I believe her name is Bellamia, also said that she can confirm that she was indeed stripping. And I believe she probably saw her with her hoe bag or her work bag coming in at night, because who else would be coming in, you know, at night with a big bag of money and or clothes and shoes and stuff. So I'm guessing from there she went from stripping to doing S work. A lot of stripper girlies do this sometimes. It's not like a new phenomenon that, you know, strippers sometimes do full service, but Melissa decided to do that. She began picking up extra work as a full service girly through Craigslist. The landlord and her husband recalls Melissa to be a very great tenant, and also says she never recalls Melissa bringing any of her boyfriends or clients home, which, by the way, is amazing hoe etiquette. You hear me? Amazing. Your safety, your safe haven, that's your sanctuary. That's all you got. In July of 2009, Bellamia, Melissa's landlord, began to worry when Melissa's 8 cats were just clawing on the door. Melissa was nowhere to be found. And honestly, this breaks my heart even more, like being a pet owner and you're not there to care for them. Like, I know they were so worried. I know they were missing her. It just breaks my heart even more. And she was an animal person. 8 cats, Cash can feel it. Just truly the epitome of a sweetheart. On July 9th, 2009, Melissa sent a late night text to Amanda, her sister. Amanda, who was only 15 at the time, was the only family member who knew that Melissa was doing full service, not just cutting hair or stripping. That text would be the last time that her family would hear from her. Earlier the next day, on the 10th, Melissa made a $900 or $1,000 deposit into her bank account, and she tried to contact an ex-boyfriend who didn't answer. She also checked her voicemail from 2 motels in Massapequa, a Budget Inn, and a Best Western. On July 12th, 2009, Melissa told her friends that she was going to see a client, and she would be right back in the morning. But after this, Melissa went radio silent. Less than 24 hours later, the family immediately went to the New York precinct to report her missing, but to no avail. Like always, they did nothing. As they do all the time when it comes to minority women, and don't let them be and find out that they're an S worker or has, you know, a criminal background of being an S worker or a drug user. Like, God forbid that, then you can can it. A few days later, a family friend convinced the Erie County Sheriff's Department to, you know, kind of get the NYPD to take the case seriously. The NYPD opened a missing persons case on Melissa Bartholomew, and everything began. They were soon in touch with their Long Island counterparts. Y'all know New York, Long Island. They need to check everywhere, because, like, where could she be? But y'all, please get this. After they started taking the case seriously, her sister, her 15-year-old sister, started getting disturbing phone calls. On July 16th, 19th, and the 23rd, 3 separate accounts, an unknown man called Amanda's phone, telling Amanda or asking, did she know that Amanda was a prostitute and that she wasn't a good person. Amanda says the voice was self-assured. The caller says, is this Melissa's little sister? I hear you're a half-breed. Again, the caller kept toying with Amanda, just saying weird and off-putting things. Another time, he called and asked, are you going to be a whore like your sister? Like, huh? First of all, who is this? Second of all, how do you have this sensitive information about this child? Amanda's only 15 when this happened. Whoever was calling Amanda knew her physical attributes, knew how she looked like. They knew she was mixed. In total, there were 7 calls. The NYPD traced the calls to around Madison Square Garden, to Midtown Manhattan, and another to Massapequa. But as you see, these are so broad. Like, investigators would later suggest that the caller chose these highly dense, populated areas so, they could be hid from surveillance cameras. As well, they knew that the person calling knew to keep it short, because they knew that the police need approximately around 3 minutes to pinpoint where this person is making the call from. People speculated that the caller could indeed be the killer or the person that's behind Melissa's disappearance. And like most psychopaths do, they taunt the families. We've seen this in the Bundy case. We've seen this in so many cases where they like to taunt and be like, well, you don't know me. The Zodiac killer, like so many. People even suggest that the person could even have a background in law enforcement, which is honestly probably true, because how could they know this if they're not studying these things? NYPD detectives rushed to the area of these calls each time, but to no avail. They could not pinpoint or find who this person was. In the last call in August 2009, the person on the other end straight out told Amanda that he killed Melissa. And then Amanda immediately started to worry, because they honestly felt like the person on the call could know where they live. And a short time later, they moved. Investigators were able to locate a second phone that belonged to Melissa. The cell phone was found in possession of a convicted felon who told police that he got the phone from a scuffle from 2 workers and a pimp. But they ended up searching the phone, and the phone was a dead end. Showing Melissa's pictures at Long Island and in Manhattan didn't lead to anything either. Nobody knew anything. A sidekick the family hired would prove to have been better luck. She claimed that Melissa was in a shallow grave near the ocean, in a place beginning with the letter G, which I'm not gonna lie, that's hella accurate. Really impressive. And I honestly do believe in consulting the spiritual realm in things like this, because a lot of times these spirits want justice. Going through Melissa's belongings after she disappeared, Lynn discovered a letter that Melissa wrote to her pimp, telling him that she felt like he was taking too much of her money. And quite frankly, she was tired of working for him. Her mother recalls Melissa telling a story where a man tried to rob her with a knife, where she took the knife from the man and stabbed him instead. Later, she found out that the thief was a John, or basically a client. And sounds broke man-like. Again, Melissa's younger sister Amanda had visited her, multiple times in New York, and already knew, what Melissa had gone on. Oh my God, that sounds really had going on. So country. Amanda says she really didn't come out and say it, but she could see what was going on. Melissa also would post on sites like Adult Friend Finder. She would use aliases like Chloe or Very Sexy Chloe. Melissa had tattoos like Blaze and Focus on her back, and also tattoos on her chest. She was also known to meet clients in public places like bars, restaurants, hotels on the west side of Manhattan. And honestly, I'm unsure if they did like a thorough search of her last days, because like there's no surveillance or just anything of them saying that they surveyed the area. On December 11th, 2010, literally 4 months later, police would find Melissa's body at the age of 24 on the north side of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. Although she was the first victim to be found, she is believed to be the second victim to be killed of the Gilgo Four. 2 days later, investigators discovered the remains of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Amber Costello, and Megan Waterman, strewn across a half-mile stretch along Gilgo Beach. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was only 25 years young when she went missing, and is believed to be the first of the women to disappear in 2007. And at the time of her disappearance, she was actually living in Norwich, Connecticut. Maureen Brainerd Barnes grew up in Groton, Connecticut, a blue-collar town where in today's time they're most known for their casinos. I believe their biggest employees are the Foxwood and the Mohegan Sun Casino. Maureen was a true artiste, and she just filled composition books with song lyrics and poems. Just a true artist. She wasn't interested in material things, and she didn't wear makeup. She was honestly just a natural girly. In high school, she was a straight A student, but at 17, she ended up dropping out when she became pregnant. She married, got her GED, then got divorced, and shared custody of her daughter, who is now, I believe, in her teens now. Maureen worked as a blackjack dealer at the Foxwood Casino, as well as a ShopRite and a gas station. Sometime in 2006, she saw an ad where it says you can be a model type of offer, and I believe she submitted her photos, and this is where she began to enter the world of modeling. A friend she made in the model search process was the one who introduced her to full-service escort through Craigslist. Maureen started taking weekend trips to Manhattan, telling, others that she was going out for modeling gigs. Early on, she became pregnant and eventually gave up full service to, be a mother. But once the second baby arrived, she knew it was time to get back to business. Most of Maureen's family and friends knew very well of what she was doing in New York. There was no need to hide anything. Her sister Melissa Can says that we all kind of knew about it, but we just never really thought about it. She also says that no one really could keep Maureen from doing the things that she wanted to do. While in New York, Maureen would call her friends sometimes just to chat and sometimes to ask them to refresh her Craigslist page so she can be at the top of the page so, she can get a lot of clients. A friend says much of what she made would go to recreational drugs, but again, I would take that from a grain of salt. They said she liked to party. Again, she liked to smoke weed and she liked to use coke. But like I said, I would take that with a grain of salt. Because what did Whitney say? Thank you. The weekend she disappeared, Maureen took the train with her friends to the city, but decided to leave them once she got to Manhattan. Melissa Can, her sister, says that Maureen never, ever saw clients in her own home and only saw clients in hotel rooms, which again is great etiquette for safety in your sanctuary. Maureen was adamant about working in Manhattan, and she never mentioned to her sister Melissa that she would be working in Long Island. At one point that weekend, Maureen called one of her friends from the Port Authority, telling them that she had been robbed and that she lost all the money that she had made. Maureen told the friend that she needed a ride home, but the friend told her that they couldn't come get her. After that call, no one heard from Maureen ever again. And I can just, the amount, just probably of guilt the friend feels. And probably the friend was just at work and just a simple excuse. And just for 3 years, the NYPD had no trace of Maureen, except in 2008, for one cell phone signal to ping off a Long Island tower just miles near Gilgo Beach. Melissa recalls that someone was also trying to access Maureen's voicemails. And just like that, when the news broke about the bodies found on Gilgo Beach, Melissa Can, her sister, just automatically knew that Maureen was one of the bodies found. Melissa Can was the first of the families to really reach out to anyone to, just build a rapport of just, of a family of just we're here for each other type of thing. And they just eventually made a huge Facebook forum, just showing Facebook pages, just showing the beautiful lives of all the victims that were found. But before all this, Melissa and her husband took fruitless trips, and their brother took countless trips to New York to search for their sister for themselves. It took 2.5 years for them to get Maureen's name on the missing registers list. Melissa Can tells reporters that she literally took Maureen's items herself, her cell phone, her emails, just everything, trying to retrack her steps, being that nobody else was trying to. Melissa Ken found out that the day that Maureen went missing, the next day she was supposed to meet in eviction court. This was truly her last resort. She went into S work to survive. Maureen is believed to have taken the Amtrak train from New London, Connecticut to the main Grand Terminal in Manhattan on July 6th, 2007. While in Manhattan, she was believed to be staying at the Super 8 Motel located on 59 West 46th Street. At the time, Maureen, who stood 4 feet 11 inches tall, was a full-service S worker who advertised on Craigslist, Backpage, and other sites like that. She was known to advertise under the names as Juliana or Marie. On occasions, Maureen would have a travel buddy or another female who was in the same line of work, but with a different room. They both may have used a male friend who sometimes they would say is their cousin to clients to accompany them as like a sense of security and just a sense of protection. However, her friend that she traveled with returned home, but Maureen was nowhere to be found. Maureen was last heard from on July 9th, 2007 at approximately 11:43 p.m. when she called her friend. Although she was known to work out of motel rooms or hotel rooms, this specific night, she told her friend that she was actually going to a client for an out call. An out call is usually when you literally go out to a client and meet them somewhere. Maureen Brandon Barnes was later found December 13th, 2010 on the north side of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach during the search of Shannan Gilbert.
For some odd reason, my footage is lost, so here goes the next part. The most recent victim, Amber Costello, was last seen in North Babylon, Long Island on September 2nd. Amber Lynn Costello was born February 10th, 1983. Amber and Kimberly, her sister, grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, and lived on and off together in Florida. Then for 5 years in Long Island, about 20-minute drive from Gilgo Beach, after her second marriage ended in 2009. Amber was a basket case, she says, which had me taken aback. Her sister also noted that Amber struggled with drugs, particularly heroin. Kimberly tells news stations that she was the one who actually brought Amber into S work. She says, I've done this, and it really isn't about being naive. In the beginning, you make the money, and you're making it without the drugs and without the BS. And then you get addicted to the money, which is 1,000% correct. Then people can't separate their life between how much money they make in S work. It's like you get warped into money and how much in the classism of it all, and just the systematic of you're better than somebody else. In S work, you really get looped into that. It's literally an addiction to fast money. When she first moved to Suffolk County, Amber made $3,500 a week. Easy, says Kimberly. In 4 months, it was $7,000. We traveled up and down the East Coast doing it, from Hilton Head, Florida, New Orleans. However, she states that much of that was with an escort agency. But eventually, Amber decided to switch up and go to do things on her own, and she decided to go on Craigslist. In her last year, Kim, her sister, was getting out of the business, tapering off to about 10 calls a week because she had 3 children. But Amber was desperate, she says, making 5 calls a night. She was doing calls for under $100 just to keep up her drug habit.
A few months before Amber disappeared, Kim persuaded Amber to check herself into a detox program at Nassau University Medical Center. But while Kim was taking care of their sick father in North Carolina, she found out that Amber had checked herself out and just didn't want to go anymore. Kim recalls when Amber relapsed, and I feel like this probably wasn't her first time relapsing because Kim knew her schedule to a T, which I feel like most siblings do. She said her daily routine was she would get up, she would take the train, go into the city, cop, come back, which cop is like pick up, drugs, come back, and then set up some calls for work. Kim recalls her very exact words when she found out that Amber went missing. She said, I thought, well, she probably just met someone to probably just get high with her. This caused her to not even file a missing person report. I feel like she didn't because you know how police do when they find out you're a sex worker and a drug user? Good luck. Kim also quoted that she said she knew that the police would not take the case seriously. Amber Lynn Costello was 27 years old and was living at 1112 American Avenue in West Babylon when she was last seen by her acquaintances. As we all know, Amber did frequent with using heroin, and it is noted that Amber lived with a few friends, I believe a woman and like 2 men or whatever, and they all were heroin addicts. So they basically just all lived together. I wouldn't call it like a trap house situation, but they just felt like it was safer for them to be in an environment together with their addiction. And honestly, it makes sense that she kept relapsing when you're in a situation of, nobody's getting better. You have nobody to see, the positives of this is what it looks like when you're clean. So it makes sense that, she kept relapsing. Very much an enabling environment. Amber, who stood 4 feet 11 inches tall, she used the aliases as Carolina or Mia, and had tattoos of chaos or K-A-O-S on her neck, a butterfly on her lower back, and a tattoo that read Margaret on her leg. Amber and her roommates also shared a cell phone. Her other roommate, who was the other woman in there, was also a S worker with Amber. And the 2 males that were living in there would actually set up the calls for them. Amber did in calls in her home as well as out calls seeing other clients. When Amber would meet some of these clients at her home, the 2 male roommates would actually try and sometimes succeed on scamming the clients. They would make them come in and say, you have to pay me money first. I'm her boyfriend. And if you want to see her, you have to pay me first. And this would cause a lot of the clients to run and flee. Amber was last seen leaving her residence on foot on September 2nd, 2010 to meet a client who was picking her up. Amber did not have the shared cell phone with her at the time. And as I stated earlier, she was never reported missing. Amber Lynn Costello was also found on December 13th, 2010 on the north side of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach while they were searching for the missing person, Shannon Gilbert. Amber is believed to be the 4th victim of what we know as the Gilgo Four. Megan Waterman, who was 22 at the last time she was reported seen, was born January 18th, 1988. She was living in Scarborough, Maine, I believe that's how you say that, where she was taking care of her younger daughter. Known to be very bubbly and just sweet, Megan was very secretive about her doing full S work. Her family only learned about it when her mother, Lorraine Ella, went to the grocery store and the grocery store clerk actually told her mother because they had overheard it. It's giving a small town and it's giving everybody's nosy. Her mother also says that she missed a lot of Megan's childhood because she was just simply too drunk. Her mother, Lorraine, says she eventually got sober when Megan was 15. 2 years later, so when Megan was 17, Megan became pregnant and decided to move home with her mother. And this immediately made the mother and daughter extremely close. And I feel like that's just with motherhood anyway. When you're carrying a life, your mother is the guide. Like, you've done this before, copy and paste. Let's not copy and paste. Let's make some edits. Or copy, paste, and an edit. How about it? Lorraine says, Megan was fun, caring, and a loving mom. If you would meet Megan, you would just fall in love with her. Lorraine actually believes that Megan was forced into doing full service. Her boyfriend, Akeem Cruz, acted as her pimp, where he would post ads for her on Craigslist, where he would say, "Hi, my name is Lexi. I have blonde hair, blue eyes, great attitude." No punctuation, by the way. Put it right here. "I love what I do. Your time with me is never rushed." Lorraine says every time she asked Megan about being, involved in S work, she immediately denied. Her mother says, and I quote, "She tried to tell us for the longest that she was just doing dancing, but we all knew different. We told her, it's not safe. You need to think of your daughter." And honestly, I truly believe there's a lot of mothers in S work, and a lot of them are thinking of, sorry, I can't mess with my hair. A lot of them are thinking of their daughters. They're thinking of a way to provide, to feed, to, provide the life that they always wanted. And sometimes S work allows that. Megan was last seen at the Holiday Inn in Hapag, Long Island, doing a Craigslist call. He came with her boyfriend, of course. But get this, y'all. He had literally just got out on bail for cocaine charges in Maine, like the next day or like the previous day. So this was his first real day back with her. He usually stayed with Megan on calls, but this night in particular, he left her. Akeem is reportedly back in prison now, and he is not at all being cooperative with police, with detectives, on finding information about what really happened that night. And to me, it's really fishy. If Akeem didn't do nothing, maybe he set her up, it's given setup. Lorraine even finds his behavior to be very suspicious. She even claimed, like exclaimed in like all the news reports, interviews, every time you're usually with her for an out call, but this particular night she goes missing, you're not there. Could be coincidence, but it's a crazy coincidence if it is. And why are you not cooperating? But Lorraine eventually says that Megan had her own struggles, especially with alcohol, and that probably could be why she stayed with Akeem. In the summer of 2010, Megan decided to take a trip to New York to work as an S worker, and this is called a tour, which is basically to expand your clientele of just, instead of being in one state, you have a greater reach of multiple states now. Megan Waterman was 22 years old when she was last seen on June 6th, 2010. She used the names as Lexi or Sexy Lexi. She was last seen by her family, boarding a New York-bound Concord Trailways bus from Maine with her boyfriend Akeem or Pimp. Megan was known to always travel and get a hotel. When she would be going to Long Island, she would usually stay at the extended stay or the Holiday Inn. And I believe in Bethpage or Bethpage, Long Island. Long Island words really trip me up. The cities. We do know that Megan left the Holiday Inn Express at approximately 1:30 a.m. on June 6, 2010 to meet a client. Megan called Akeem, who was in Brooklyn at the time. He was slipping. He was gone. Like, he dropped her off there and then, Brooklyn? Long Island? Okay. So Megan called Akeem, her boyfriend, who was in Brooklyn at the time, to tell her she was going to a convenience store. So I guess she just wanted to, make sure that he had, her last locations, even though it wouldn't be helpful now because he's not trying to help. And just to note that this convenience store was right near the hotel. Megan was reported missing to the Scarborough, Maine Police Department on June 8th, 2010. So literally 2 days after they were last actually seen her get on the bus. Family knew it was very much unlike her not to call in and check on her 3-year-old daughter. The Scarborough, Maine Police Department contacted the Suffolk County Police Department to work together to figure out where is this missing person. And in about 5 months, just like the rest, Megan's body was found on December 13th, 2010, off Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach during the search for the missing person, Shannon Gilbert. Megan is believed to be the third victim of what we know as the Gilgo Four. Megan's pimp and boyfriend, Akeem Cruz, was arrested again, not for the cocaine, but again. But this time, he was arrested on federal charges of interstate trafficking of prostitutes, which is like a new branch they have in NYPD or different law enforcement, where they try to get people that's trying to force people into S work to combat, I believe, sex trafficking. So Akeem was arrested on April 11th, 2012, and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison on January 2013. So I believe he's out about now, or probably still in jail. We don't know. There honestly is no knowledge or information that he may have any connection to Megan's disappearance or murder. The 4 women, who were all wrapped in camouflage burlap, all had similar cases. They were all full-service S workers who advertised on Craigslist and went missing between July 2007 and September 2010. Y'all know those stupid calls that whoever was playing telephone wanted to do and thought it was real cute? Well, those calls, authorities say, would help unravel the case. Police said in January 2011, so like a month after her body as well as the other bodies were found, calls from Melissa's cell phone had been traced to Midtown Manhattan, with the last 2 calls being made around Madison Square Garden and Times Square. However, the caller hung up a little too quickly for them to give a precise location of where the caller is. On March 29, 2011, the partial skeletal remains of another woman will be found just miles from where the Gilgo 4 were, or where Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and Melissa Bartholomew were found. And honestly, I may switch from saying the Gilgo 4 to their specific names because it's important to give names to these bodies. Like, these were people we're talking about. They were more than just a group of bodies being found. They were people, they were friends, they were family. The woman found was known as Jane Doe number 5 before investigators identified her as Jessica Taylor, a full-service S worker. But get this, y'all. They also found another set of her remains in 2003 in Manorville. Originally from Poughkeepsie, New York, and was born June 17, 1983, Jessica Taylor had moved away from home as a teenager and moved to Brooklyn. She spent about 3 years under the control of her pimp, Khalil White, where they would travel up and down the East Coast. Khalil White also had an alias named Remy, and so sometimes I might use those interchangeably, but they're the same person. She had made statements about wanting to escape the full-service lifestyle to her family and friends. But once you have an enforcer behind you to push you, to make you do things, it's hard for you to get out. During a trip to Washington, D.C., Jessica decided to return home. She left on July 15, 2003, and was later reported by Khalil the next day that she was missing. Her vehicle broke down along the way back home, but she was able to hitchhike back home to Brooklyn. Jessica was an upstate New York native and was last seen on the streets of Manhattan working near the Port Authority bus terminal, literally the week before her body was found. And this made me think that she was actually hitting the blade, like getting her clientele from the street and not so on Craigslist. If it was Craigslist, it was because of Remy, and I don't think it was because of her. I think for her, she was getting more of her clientele on the street. With this being said, she had been arrested in Atlantic City, New York, DC for those reasons. But honestly, any other information about Jessica is not really known. She had been working at the Authority bus terminal between July 18th and July 21st. This area is also known as the Minnesota Strip, a term once coined by cops in the 70s because the stretch of the 8th Street, I think, went along to from between 42nd and 52nd Street. And these long stretch of street is where the ladies of the night would be. And when Minnesota passed the tough anti-S worker laws, many of those women fled to New York. In the 90s, the area was cleaned up, making it unusual to see topless women at midnight. I guess back in the day, they were young, wild, and free, baby. But in today's time, they said in the 90s, yeah, there's still some shops that, you know, had those nightlife risque things, different adult shops that were still on display where you could, you know, get that thrill. And again, there were still sex workers out there. When Jessica's nude body was found near a sump, decapacitated, missing her hands, and with the tattoo that had appeared to be mutilated, so nobody could really identify who the person was. Speculation of a serial killer on the loose was being talked around town in Manorville. Everybody had their eyes and ears open because what is this? Especially when there were multiple murder victims being found in the woodlands of Long Island Pine Barrens. In Jessica's case, police photo was taken to identify or basically see what was going on the tattoo on the right side of her back. It appeared that whoever did this to Jessica made little small like gash cuts in her tattoo to make it where you can't identify the tattoo. Huh? Like, they literally said not cutting the tattoo off, which a lot of killers do. He literally slashed it from top to bottom, like you're crossing out something. Police say it took metal examiners to push the skin together to identify what the tattoo was. It was a red heart with an angel wing that said Remy's Angel. A Washington, D.C. detective recognized the tattoo about 6 months later after an S worker came to report that her friend, who was a fellow S worker, was missing. Jessica's cousin Jasmine said she is grateful for law enforcement and everything that they're put into the case. Jessica's cousin has been working diligently and off the charts of just telling everybody that, you know, of Jessica's real story. It's being reported that Jessica had an estranged relationship with her family, and Jasmine is letting everybody know that is not true. She was loved and always was in communication with her family, if not always, just a regular amount. Her cousin literally reports that despite Jessica being an S worker before she was killed, she was loved. Jasmine says, Jessica was a person who was a true force. Jessica had a huge heart, and she's incredibly loved and missed. She was an inspiration and somebody that I looked up to. She also had a feisty streak and would stand up for herself when necessary. She didn't easily take disrespect. She also noted that I hope she's remembered as a beautiful person she was and not as an S worker. But for me, when I read this, I don't know, I love to say and, not just but and. She was a beautiful person and an S worker. Like, you can be a beautiful person and an S worker. Yes, they're trying to make this case all about S work and, you know, if you put yourself in this situation, that's what happens. No, there's a lot of beautiful people in S work. A lot of beautiful people in crazy predicaments. There's no need for people to only put one face when there's multiple faces of people. The following month that Jessica was found, on April 4th, 2011, 3 more sets of remains were found by Suffolk County Police. They included a female toddler, an unidentified Asian male, and another unidentified woman who they labeled as Jane Doe number 6. They honestly had no clue of who these bodies were or why are they finding them now? It is estimated that the Asian male found was about 17 to 35 years old at the time of his death. It is believed that he died between 5 and 10 years before his body was found. So that would be between 2001 and 2006. He was also found to be in woman's clothing. I believe from the articles they said it was like a leotard and a skirt or something like that. But all in all, they could not identify the male or the toddler. They did, however, collect jewelry from the toddler's remains in hopes of hopefully identifying the child. 1 week later, 2 additional sets of human remains were found in Nassau County, about 40 miles east of New York City, one of which was identified as the mother of the toddler through DNA analysis. The mother's partial remains were first discovered in 1997 in Hempstead Lake State Park. They did analysis of the remains and found that the woman they found was a Black woman, and she had become known as Peaches because of the peach tattoo she had on her left breast. They also noted that it had been bitten. Yes, I said bitten, like Mike Tyson. What is with this perp with like destroying tattoos? Being that they still have yet to identify Peaches or the baby, they labeled the toddler as Baby Doe. Peach's extremities, and they did not specify which limbs, were found near Zacks Bay on April 11, 2011. And they found her daughter's skeletal remains about 8 miles near east of Cedar Beach 8 days prior. This places the mother and the toddler on 2 separate ends of the dumping ground. The child, estimated between 16 and 32 months, and her mother were the farthest apart of all of the 11 victims. And to me, I feel like the killer does this too, or people do this, especially when they know you have children. Like, this is definitely a crime against a mother and a child. Like, they knew like how much a love and a child and a mother has. And I feel like they purposely put them 2 separate. Like, you're not gonna be buried with your child type of thing. What a sicko. Peaches, who was believed to be about 20 to 30 years old, is the 4th out of the 10 victims to have her body parts scattered everywhere along Ocean Parkway, and finding the rest of her remains somewhere near down the street of Long Island. But however, the other 6 victims remained intact. People concluded, I don't know, was it investigators or true crime sploofs? People concluded that the women that were found dismembered along the beach were killed between 1 and 3 years apart. Peach's torso or her head has yet to be found. The Manorville victims and Peaches were believed to have been killed just days prior before somebody discovered the bodies. Jessica Taylor is the only one of the dismembered bodies to be correctly identified. Peaches and her daughter, who were wearing gold jewelry, are the only 2 victims to be identified as Black. One of the best publicly known leads comes from when a detective put in an ad about Peaches' tattoo, saying like, do you know, who did this tattoo? Anybody know, of a friend that had this tattoo? And they even put it out in tattoo magazines. This led Stephen Cullen, a tattoo artist from Bristol, Connecticut, to contact police department in relation to the Peaches tattoo. So Stephen was actually interviewed by the producers of The Killing Season, which is an amazing, amazing podcast on YouTube. So they interviewed him in detail, and this is where I got most of my information from. So Stephen recalls the day that Peaches came in. She came in with a friend and wanted to get a Peaches tattoo. Stephen also noted that later on, Peaches' son had called, or somebody that was, claiming to be Peaches' mother and son, wanted to come up there to get a recreation tattoo and memorial for her, but he never heard anything else. And I'll go ahead and put the link to their docuseries below. They did an amazing job on the Gilgo Beach murders. The other set of remains found were said to be a genetic match to the remains they found on Fire Island just a few years back. Police say this significantly expanded the reach and geographic area of the search. And to me, this kind of put like they were finally starting to connect the dots. Like everything is just not in one place. This person is traveling. They labeled the body found on Fire Island to be Jane Doe number 7 or Fire Island Doe. They later identified this woman to be Karen Vergata or Carmen Vergata, depending on what articles you find. Karen was the second child of Dominic and Ann Vergata, who also had a son. Karen was a full-service S worker when she disappeared on February 14th, 1996. Gosh, that's Valentine's Day, I think. She was known by her family and friends to be a sweet and loving soul, just so genuine. They said she lived on West 45th Street in Manhattan, but her legs were discovered on Fire Island, which is about a mile west of Davis Park back in 1996. Police honestly had no clue whose legs these were until they found her skull in the spring of 2011. And again, her skull was found along Ocean Parkway, not Fire Island. Authorities said that there was no missing person report when they found her extremities, so there was no way to really identify her. Officials were able to identify her using a genealogical profile. Karen was initially thought to be a victim of Joel Rifkin, who admitted to killing 17 women back in 1989 to 94. But he denied involvement in her death after he was once convicted and arrested. Being that she went missing in 1996, this makes me think that either her or Peaches was the very first victim. In December of 2011, Shannon Gilbert's body was found near the wooded area or marshes of Suffolk County's Oak Beach. The beach is about 9 miles from where the other 10 remains were found. Authorities later say that Shannon Gilbert's death was accidental and were not involved or had any relation with the Gilgo Beach slayings. Literally, time, years flew by, and I'm not sure if was this the time they needed to do a thorough investigation, or was it because they had a conflict of interest on the police force, because they said that was a rumor that somebody was involved, so that's why they had to switch to task force. But it honestly took some time before more information would get out on this case. True crimers and the victim's family took it upon themselves to actually put the pieces together and solve this crime. And honestly, y'all, they were spot on. Literally putting piece after piece together. On December 10th of 2015, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Tom Tim Sinney, made an official statement saying that FBI had joined the case. This announcement came exactly 1 day after the former police chief, James Burke, had to step down. And he had to step down because Mr. James Burke was indicted for civil rights violations and conspiracy. James, who resigned from the police force in October of 2015, was reported to have blocked FBI involvement for the Gilgo Beach murders for years. I mean, we're talking they found these bodies in 2010, 2011, 2015. My man's was working hard so nobody can figure that out for 4 years. Was he involved? The FBI had previously been involved with searching for different victims, but they weren't in charge of the overall collective case until now. In November of 2016, James Burke was sentenced to 46 months for assault and conspiracy. 46 months? That's like 4 years? Just about. Yeah, a little under 4 years. Okay. All in all, with that distraction out the way, this made the FBI dig a little deeper into the case. On September 12, 2017, Suffolk County prosecutor Robert Biancavilla said that John Boltroff, a Suffolk County resident convicted for the killing of 2 S-workers and maybe the possibility of a third, may have committed some of these Gilgo Beach murders. The prosecutor said that John was likely responsible for the murders of other women, and he noticed that there was a lot of similarities in his cases that he was convicted for, as well as the unsolved Gilgo Beach cases. After looking at, the 2 murders of the women that John committed face value, they decided to convict John Boltroff on May 2017, and he was later arrested in September. But Boltroff was initially arrested in 2014 after they found his DNA on 2 of the murder suspects, Rita Tangredi and Colleen McName, whose bodies were found in 1993 and 1994. The match had been made through DNA, which was submitted by his brother, who was actually convicted of a crime in 2013. They gonna find you. In my notes, just a family of perpetrators. True. So after everything, let's get into John's sentencing. They sentenced John for 25 years each victim, so that's about 50 years in prison. The Suffolk County Police did not comment on his prosecution, being that the Gilgo Beach case was still very active. So why do you think they're connecting him other than, killing 2 S-workers? Well, Mr. John Boltroff lived in Manorville, which is about 30 miles from where the torso of Jessica Taylor and Jane Doe number 6 was found. So let's get into a little bit about John so y'all can see, are we putting 2 and 2 together? Is this him? Okay, so they say that John loved hunting, he loved guns, he loved to kill. That was just his hobby. He was also a carpenter by trade, so he had access to hacksaws and electrical equipment at his disposal. Because many of these bodies were found dismembered, we have to take that into account. Let's also take into account that Rita Tangredi was best friends, y'all, with none other than our victim, Melissa Bartholomew. Melissa's mother also noted that Melissa would be getting calls from Manorville before her death. So 3 years flowed on by, and now we're in January of 2020. The Suffolk County Police Department released a picture which they found to be a significant piece of evidence. A black leather belt embossed with the initials WH or HM. The department also launched a website for individuals to bring in and just give any tips they have about the investigation. Former Suffolk Police Commissioner told reporters that they believed that this belt was indeed the perpetrator and not belonging to any of the victims. On May 28th, 2020, Suffolk County Police finally identified who they found to be Jane Doe number 6 as Valerie Mack, a 24-year-old Philadelphia mother who went missing 2 decades earlier. Born on June 2nd, 1976, Valerie Lynn Fulton arrived at the Mack household after it seemed like shuffling for almost 10 years to different households in the foster home system. Valerie's relatives said that Valerie's mother had a severe drinking problem and had a lot of troubled relationships with men. This caused all of her children to be placed in the foster care system. It turns out that Edwin and Joanne Mack were looking to adopt another child and found out about Valerie from a family or a couple from their church. And fun fact, actually Valerie's sister was actually adopted by the Mack family as well right after Valerie. Valerie's sister, whom the Macks adopted immediately after Valerie recalls, the thing I remember about her the most was how fiercely protective and nurturing she was towards us. I looked up to her and she was the coolest person on the planet in my mind. The Mack family recalls that she was doing extremely well in school, and one of her most prized possessions was her upright piano that still is in the Mack's home today. But like many of us coming to high school, Valerie's life began to unravel when she entered the 9th grade. And at the age of 14, like many preteens at this age, she began to run away from home and start to hang around the wrong crowd. And when people say start to hang around the wrong crowd, you can already read between the lines. Like, this just group was known to like skip school and just do drugs. Eventually, the family sought out counseling from a New Jersey crisis center specializing in children. But honestly, nothing seemed to work for Valerie. And when Valerie turned 17, the social state service, the people that's basically ahead of the foster care system, told the Mack family that Valerie was seen as an adult. She can make her own decisions, which I feel like they do that a lot to foster children that are 17. Like, they're still teenagers. Joanne Mack said she had become pretty rebellious, so the state figured that she was able to live on her own. In the early 1990s, Valerie moved in with her late half-sister, Deidre Gimilado, who lived in the seaside town of Wildwood, New Jersey. In 1994, Valerie gave birth to her son, Benjamin, and began to live with the father of her child. But Valerie did not stay long. She eventually left Benjamin and decided just to pack up and leave altogether. Her parents noted that during this time, she kept traveling back and forth from Philadelphia to New Jersey. And as you know, when you look up a lot of these victims, they love to put their criminal record to the forefront. But we're going to skip real through that because we don't care, for real. But in Philadelphia, she was arrested multiple times for full service. She's a full service girl. Sometimes that happens. Valerie used the alias Melissa Taylor. And the Macks said that once they found out that Valerie was involved in full service S-work, it troubled them so intensely. And they honestly feared for her safety. Those fears abated somewhat in fall of 1999 when Valerie was diagnosed with pericarditis. Pericarditis is an inflammation of the outer layering of the heart. This caused her to immediately move back with the Macks as soon as she left the hospital. And this is when her parents felt like her life was truly turning around. Valerie got a job at the local Dollar Tree store in Egg Harbor Township, but she just could not shake this feeling that something bad was going to happen to her. Valerie left home again in October of 2000 to go visit her son Benjamin and her half-sister in Wildwood. Her mother remembers that it was at this time that she heard Valerie mention New York, and she's never really mentioned New York before. Joanne also states that when she left that day from her sister's house, she said she was going to New York, and she was with a guy. Valerie Mack was only 24 years young when she abruptly disappeared from Joanne and Edwin's life. In October 2000, her adoptive parents and also her other relatives searched high and low for years. They were not giving up. Everyone feared that something truly bad happened to her. Maybe what she was feeling wasn't just a weird inkling. Edwin Mack told newspapers that once Valerie was found, they were just in complete shock. He also added, finding out that not only she was gone, but also had she been found was like stepping into a nightmare. Her sister Danielle Wade said, Valerie was never listed as a missing person, and I'm guessing maybe because they knew that being that she was involved in escort, that the police weren't really going to take it seriously. Her partial skeletal remains were found in September 2000 in Manorville, and this is where she was listed as Jane Doe number 6. More of Valerie's remains were recovered on April 4th, 2011 near Ocean Parkway. Using samples from her remains, Suffolk County Police Department were able to find and track Valerie's son from her genealogy profile. It's honestly impressive. And they could track her adoptive family too. 2 years go by, and in February of 2022, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner finally set up a task force specifically for the Gilgo Beach cases. The task force included the Suffolk County Police Office. They also included the FBI. They included the New York State Police, as well as the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. On March 14th of 2022, Rex Heuermann was listed as a possible suspect for the Gilgo Beach murders. And this happened after a New York State investigator began to identify him in the database. And y'all already know, once they have their eyes on you, they're gonna get you, okay? So from the investigators then began to start surveilling him like intensely. Like they were on him. Every time him or a family member left the house, they were gonna find him. The investigators even began to take pieces of garbage from, his garbage can or just anywhere they see him throw trash to collect DNA samples. They even got a discarded pizza crust, which they took in to investigators. And my thing is, they're really doing, they're putting the force on him. He must have really had some damning evidence against him. And my guess are those weird phone calls. Well, who is this nigga? Rex Heuermann grew up in a Long Island home. Rex's father was an aerospace engineer, and he reportedly died when Rex was just a preteen. And I keep wanting to call this man Rex. Y'all know the name. His name's Rex, T-Rex. And I'm guessing this event caused him to be extremely close with his mother. Rex attended Burner High School, and he graduated in the class of 1981. After this, he then bought, which I'm not sure. Y'all know I don't like going too much in detail about the killers because who cares? But I'm not sure what he did for college. I'm guessing he did something else because his career took off. So I'm guessing he went to college. We don't know where. I really don't care. But he then decided to buy a house buy a family. I'm guessing buy the family home from his mom, Dolores, in 1994. Okay, so I'm guessing that he was from the area of Massapequa Park. Y'all had to look that up because I did not know how to say that. But people in Massapequa Park described him to be very awkward, solitary, and volatile. Classmates who remembered Rex, who graduated just 2 grades ahead of him, described him to be a victim. They said, but you could also see that he had a mean streak. They also noted that they could tell that his home life was difficult, but his school life was even worse. His classmates said that he was a loner and often a target. This quote comes from John Parisi, one of the classmates of Rex. He said that he was literally everybody's punching bag. He also noted that Rex was an outcast. He didn't fit in with the jocks, he didn't fit up with the nerds, or he didn't fit out with the burnouts. And I'm like, burnouts? What's that, like the people that skip school? I was a nerd, I don't know. Mr. Parisi also says that he was picked on quite a lot. He would take it and just walked away. They even recall that in the 6th grade, Rex had been singled out as the tall, awkward boy, and oftentimes a lot of his classmates would beat him up, even though he was really tall, which that doesn't mean anything, but he was really big for his stature. I don't know. After the teachers confronted the situation and stopped him, the students then decided to verbally abuse him. And I'm honestly guessing that this possibly could cause his anger streak, or maybe it was just the loss of his father, but who knows? And I'm also thinking that possibly a woman could have denied him, or his crush could have denied him publicly or privately, to the point where he just had a distaste for women and targeted women. But they say in high school, Rex grew larger and taller and more menacing. Eventually, everybody started to be scared of him just by his stature. John Parisi also noted that he was the type of guy that if he snapped, he really could hurt you. And again, I don't want to keep going on and on and on about Rex in his life, because we know, like most criminals, their childhood was indeed a childhood to have, just like a lot of us, but everybody else doesn't go out and murder a bunch of people. So I'm gonna skip a bunch of my report where I honestly went into detail about how people remembered Rex in high school, which I'm gonna just surmise it and say that he was bullied, and then after he became the big tall guy, people were scared of him. If you didn't see eye to eye with him, people were literally checking behind them. Like he gave off that type. And a lot of times, a lot of his old classmates said when the news broke out, they were not shocked. So to get back into the timeline, Rex later went on to college. Again, I don't know what college, and he became an architect. He started a firm called RH Consultants and Associates, which headquartered at 5th Avenue and 35th Street. It shows a variety, well, it used to, the page is not up there no more, but it did show a variety of companies that Rex worked for. I think he worked for like Nike, Target, Foot Locker, and even I think like an airline company. He eventually settled down and resided in Massapequa, Long Island. Over time, Rex became a 2-time married architect, raising 2 children, a son with special needs, with his wife, Asa Ellerup. I think that's how you say it. I think. At his home on 1st Avenue in Massapequa, Rex was not a well-liked neighbor. Neighbors of his would recall that he would chop wood in front of the yard at random times. He would also scowl them and give them very dirty looks. Other parents reportedly cautioned their children to avoid the house on Halloween. And even in one case, a parent actually threw away the candy from the Rex Heuermann house. You won't poison her child. Reportedly, Rex Heuermann planned to retire in rural South Carolina near his brother. But apparently, and we'll get into this later, Asa Ellerup, his estranged wife now, filed for divorce as soon as Rex got arrested. She had to get out. But get this, y'all. So Asa Ellerup filed for divorce against Rex, just days after his arrest in July of 2023. But get this, y'all. She's definitely pulling an El Chapo's wife when it comes to all the evidence against him, which we'll get into that later. She's like, I've never known him to be violent. I've never known him to act aggressive manner. Like, girl, maybe he was gentle with y'all, but harsh to everybody else. I don't know. And she reportedly says like she's waiting till the evidence gets released just like everybody else. Okay, Miss Girl. Earlier in 2003, reports say that Rex was kicked out of Whole Foods for stealing clementines that was meant for the kids. I can't believe it. A clerk at the store said they saw this sweaty man wearing a dingy t-shirt trying to steal the clementines. He indeed took 3 of the clementines and put them in his pocket before the manager came over to get him to, what are you doing? Rex reportedly yelled back and became just so aggressive. Man, you're stealing clementines. Eventually, they had to escort him out. Like, get him out of here, thief. Just erratic, funky behavior. In addition to the Whole Foods incident, a young Long Island woman recalls her experience with Rex in the park. So this girl says that she was going on a walk in the park as she normally does. She likes to walk, exercise, and then she sees Rex slowly approaching from behind. She recalls that this event happened in early of July of 2023, so before his arrest. And yeah, he was giving very awkward interaction to the point where it freaked her out. Allie, at 25 years old, said that she encountered Rex on July 3rd, 2023, just 10 days before his arrest, mind you. And this all happened in Brady Park. She says he came up behind her and began asking her for the time. When she told him, he then began to follow her and then proceeded to compliment her. He attempted to ask her if she came to the park often, what was her name, trying to spit game at Brady Park, and he's about to get arrested. She said that he just kept pestering her, approaching her twice during her whole trip at the park. Allie says that he had very dirty clothes on and would randomly appear from out the woods staring at her. She became so unsettled by this encounter that she immediately called her sister to pick her up and save her from whatever is going on right now. She literally states that she usually would bike home and never felt like this ever until she was in the presence of Rex. In her quote, she said, "The first time he came up behind me, I felt breathing. Lance was heavy breathing on my girl's neck." What a creep. She then says as soon as she, showed him the phone and was like, this is the time, he saw that she had the lock screen of her and her boyfriend, and this made the situation a little bit more awkward. Another strange encounter with this man comes from a TikTok of a former S-worker. I'm not sure if she's former or still doing it. And she recalls, her name is Nicole Brass, 34 years old. She recalls of a time where she went on a date with Rex. And y'all, get this. That's probably one of the weirdest dates.
Hey, so y'all asked for my story time about my date with Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach killer. I don't even know how to get into this. At a place in Port Jeff, a seafood place, and I kind of had a bad feeling to begin with, but I don't always trust my gut. I was young and dumb, so I went. We sat down, we had normal, formal talk. What do you do? What are your hobbies? We had a drink, nothing big. And then he brought up true crime. I was like, "Are you a true crime fan?" And I was like, "Actually, I am. I could probably tell you more about serial killers than their own mother can. It's bad." And he was like, "Well, do you know about the Gilgo Beach killer?" And I was like, "Of course, everybody on Long Island does. We're all following that case." And he started saying things that, first of all, led me to believe it was not just him. There were other people involved. He is taking the fall, though, I think, for all of them. And I think he will, because I think he'll probably be taken care of out of that deal. So he started saying things in the they-them term and like trying to make it seem like somebody who's just really interested in the case. But he was very detailed, and it didn't seem like somebody who was just a true crime fan. It seemed like somebody who, as they talked about it, were reliving it in their head. Like, he seemed like excited, like it piqued his interest. He sat up straighter. He, relaxed his body. He seemed like really excited to talk about it. And what got me was he mentioned a body that wasn't announced on the news yet. It wasn't in papers. Nothing. And I would have known. So that really weirded me.
Despite these reports of his strange encounters, some people actually say, and were actually shocked to hear all the news that was coming out about Rex. Some people that worked with him professionally said that he had a keen eye for detail and was attentive. They even wonder how he could have kept up with his busy work schedule and commit some of these horrendous murders. But honestly, when you're a murderer, you're gonna make time. Allie is honestly not the only person who just felt a sinister spirit about Rex. A former professional acquaintance of Rex, who did not want to be named, and I'm sure for good reason, described the father of two to be very weird. And I quote, he says, "He was always odd. He'd mosey around. We knew something was odd about him." They also added, "I feel like it makes sense he's a serial killer. He was a weirdo." Okay, y'all, so back on the case. As they closed in on Rex, they looked closer into the cell phone towers, and they went from looking at hundreds of people into now just a handful of people that called in the area. Next, authorities focused on an actual eyewitness, or the physical description of who the suspect may be from from a person that actually seen who the killer could possibly be, which is Rex, potentially. And I'm not trying to be funny, but see this big man, and I love a big man, but see this big man. He's not hard to miss, be for real, even Shrek. And then authorities zoomed in on suspects who may possibly have a green pickup truck. That's weird. Who may have a green pickup truck from another witness they seen also from the area of when the killings may happen. Later, authorities learned that Rex actually drove a green pickup truck that was under his brother. The green Chevrolet Avalanche that was last seen by Dave Scholler who actually was the last person to have seen Amber Lynn Costello. The green Chevrolet Avalanche that was last seen by a Dave Shaler, who actually was the last person to have seen Amber Lynn Costello alive. This tip right here in this connection actually was what caused Rex to be brought in and to answer some questions and possibly be a key suspect. The green pickup truck was seized on his South Carolina property. So the man was getting ready to retire and he put it on his retirement property. He was getting ready to feel like he was off. Based off the timing of their interaction, they knew that whoever drove this pickup truck was the killer of Amber Lynn Costello. They actually had a solid description of what the killer may be from Amber's witness back in 2010. She said he was a white man, approximately 6'4" to 6'6" in height. He was in his mid-40s with bushy hair and overall a 1970s style eyeglasses. The roommate also said that he appeared ogre-like. She ate him up. But Shrek would never. He wished he could be on Shrek's level. Let's be for real. Then, on March 14th, 2022, they actually zoned in and found out that Rex was the actual owner of the green Chevrolet Avalanche. They also pinpointed that he owned the vehicle at the time of the murders. And like I said before, they had the key witness, they had the green Avalanche, and this was all the police really needed. So Rex matched the key description. They had the green Avalanche. He lived near the Long Island area and he actually worked near like the New York Chesapeake area. I don't know if that's the same thing, but he worked, he lived, he had the evidence. It was matched that it was him. Oh, and not only then, they matched up the calls to be around where his office was in New York. We gotcha. They also found personal cell phone records and credit card like billing information saying that he was buying burner phones in these New York random areas. Authorities also tracked that he had these burner phones with him in his possession at the time of the killings. I'm sorry I keep messing with my hair. It's fell. Like, this case is so long, y'all. My hair just is falling. And also he used the phones to call 3 of the victims. And he also used Maureen's and Melissa's phones to make calls and make taunting phone calls. Well, voice messages, like, you know, answer machine messages, like just taunting the families of the victims. Like, you have to be a sick person to just want to taunt people. And it's giving psychopathic behavior. It's giving the Zodiac killer. It's giving he wanted to brag, like he got away. But something really in me just feels like he was not acting alone. Authorities also searched Rex's computers in his home and his office, and they found that his search history was him looking up evidence on the Long Island serial killer. He was looking up current news. He was looking up the status of the investigation and its details. Just trying to see if he beat the system like it's a game. And you lost. Or maybe it's this way. They also found that he was compulsively searching pictures and photos of the family members of the victims. And I feel like that's how he got Amber's sister. Or is it Melissa's sister? Like, you're a sick freak. And like I said, it's giving the Zodiac killer, the happy face killer, Ted Bundy, just wanted to taunt. Or even I found in recent the Golden State Killer. Like, typical. In the late 2022s, that's so weird to say. Yeah. Rex had discarded like a, regular cup from any fast food chain or just any restaurant to go, whatever. Discarded it in the trash. The police picked it up. And this is how they could get a perfect sample, a perfect DNA profile on who this Rex person is. That's all they needed. And again, they really needed like his saliva, like directly to him and not possibly the family, because they did get a match from the pizza crust, but they weren't sure was it the family, the wife, or but they needed to match it with him. Female hair was also discovered on Maureen Brainerd Barnes' body. It was actually stuck to the buckle that was used to restrain her. Female hair was also recovered from the duct tape from Megan Waterman's body. And it was also found in the burlap near Amber Costello's head. I'm not trying to be funny, but certain like ethnicity groups shed. You can't be a killer of a certain ethnicity group and don't think DNA is about to be everywhere. I'm just saying. Not trying to say you need to shave the whole family bald if you want to commit crimes like this. But messy. But also thank you. During the initial examination of one of the victim's skeletal remains and the materials from the grave, they actually discovered or recovered a male hair at the bottom of the burlap sack. As I said previously, the analysis of the pizza box and the hairs were a direct match. All of the female hairs that were on the victims matched Asa Ellerup. Currently, Rex's wife's hair that's on Maureen's body is the most significant evidence against Rex right now. The other DNA came from the 11 bottles they found in Rex's garage during the overall evidence swoop. In the evening of Thursday, July 13th, 2023, Rex was apprehended. I don't know why I'm talking so. Rex was apprehended by plainclothes NYPD. Okay, by plainclothes NYPD. And I believe he was arrested at his office in New York. And they ended up, I think he was walking in there, but they got him in a busy Manhattan street. He was then transported back to the Suffolk County Police Department headquarters. Crime laboratory officers immediately went to the Rex Heuermann residence, or the Heuermann household, I guess we could say, and immediately the next day, so that Friday the 14th, and this is where they collected all the cell phones, his evidence, like his trophies, because he had some. Of course, they had on the official attire that you have to. It has to be a sterile environment because you have to literally collect everything and not contaminate. Investigators were seen lugging bins and bins of evidence away from his home. The bins were then emptied into the truck. The same day, Rex's truck was actually towed away. So I believe they towed away the South Carolina truck and his truck at the residence. Over the weekend, investigators actually hauled out a life-size doll into the evidence truck. On Monday, July 17th, 2023, more investigating took place. Police and investigators were actually seen digging around the Rex home to see if they could find, any possible evidence. They also had cadaver dogs out there as well. Crime scene technicians were also seen taking guns out of the home. We know that Rex Heuermann had about 92 firearms. I hate that, firearms. And they also identified a large safe for his guns. Shockingly or not, investigators discovered up to 300 guns in the home. 300, y'all. What is he preparing for? I'm seeing a gun enthusiast right now. Mans has guns, but 300? I'm frightened. Officers also reportedly found a soundproof room in his basement, which they believe could be where one of the women that were found is where she was killed. No, that sounds really weird, but from cadaver dogs, they figured that this is possibly where one of the murders took place. So, like I said, they were looking for the trophies. They had the cadaver dogs. They had the little, it's not metal detectors, but, kind of the same thing, but in a higher grade, to see could they find any of the trophies that he could have buried to hide from his family in the house. Killers keep trophies or keepsakes to remind them of their thrill. I don't get it. According to the neighbors, like I said previously, Rex was continuously either chopping wood or burning things in the backyard. They also said he would sit in his running car as late as 2 a.m. with the lights on bright in front of his house. Sir, you're in the neighborhood. They see you. And they also caught him once digging a hole in the middle of the night. Nobody caught that in? Heuermann also owned a timeshare in Las Vegas. The timeshare was at Club de Soleil, and it is a popular SW district. Because, in Las Vegas, SW is legal. Full SW is legal, I believe. Which in my opinion, this possibly links him to Jody Brewer. Who is Jody Brewer? Let me tell you. Jody Marie Brewer disappeared in Las Vegas in about 21 years ago. She disappeared on August 14th, 2023 at 19 years young. Her torso was discovered wrapped in cloth, and I believe 2 weeks later they found partial parts of her body wrapped in plastic in the Mojave Desert. Her mother says she went into S work like many of the Gilgo girls, and she just honestly fell into just cahoots with the wrong crowd. Her mother recalls she had gone out for the night and she said, "I love you, Mom." She said, "I'll see you in the morning." And she told Jody that she loves her too. And her mother, Pam Brewer, says she never saw her daughter again. After his arrest, sparks immediately went off on this 20-year-old cold case. Sources believe that DNA evidence could take a lot longer, being that this is 2 decades of, DNA. DNA definitely degrades over time. And it's not the perfect sample that it is when it's first had. So it's going to take a lot of time to really get a fine analysis of this. It was reported that in August of 2023, Las Vegas were also looking at a direct DNA comparison with Rex in the murder of Victoria Camara, who was found dead near Motor City, Nevada. 2 decades ago, so around the same time of Jody Brewer, a gravel truck driver made the gruesome discovery of a body. The discarded body belonged to the teenage mother, a young S worker, Victoria Camara. Her cousin recalls Victoria to be just a beautiful and loved person. She loved makeup. She loved to build things. Her cousin says her and, Victoria would just spend so much time building Legos together. She says she was the person that she could talk to about anything. She states that Victoria was more like a big sister, being that Victoria was living with her because Victoria had a lot of family problems going on. Just to paint a picture, Victoria's father was just in and out, really not in the picture, and her mother was struggling with drug addiction. In an interview with her cousin, she states that Victoria went into S work to survive as soon as she became a young mother. And again, she became a young single mother. Her cousin says she honestly had to do whatever it took to survive. The courts brought up the case immediately as soon as they ordered a swab, a cheek swab. I believe it's called a buccal swab. Hand over it over. Like, you, not gonna say you don't have no liberty, but you're in prison, dude. Come on. They also found records indicating that Rex owned and bought, a timeshare in 2004 at the Club Wyndham Grand Desert, which I'm not sure how far or close that is to Nevada Mojave Desert. I think it's like here. We'll look that up. On Harmon Avenue and Covell Lane. He later sold it in 2013, like a decade later. So at this point, they concluded his involvement in they confirmed 3 out of the 11 victims found on Gilgo Beach. So let's break it down. The bail application, which I put the link below, indicates that Rex was caught thanks to the DNA from his wife, his own DNA that was found at the crime scene, his interesting Google searches or internet searches, and his very interesting and disgusting account of graphic and violent. Like, he was looking up some insane BDSM and torture. Like, they also found that he was looking up Asian twink or twink. So let me give y'all a little queer lesson today, okay? What's a twink? Well, according to a lot of sources, a twink is a slim, near hairless young man, or just basically, I don't want to say what people put a stereotypical gay man to be. It usually comes from somebody like in their 20s, they're young, they're feminine, and honestly, it's more of a term that the straight people use more than anything. Or it's like a joke. Like, don't be a twink. Like, it's a joke for the queers, but it's like more a straight people thing. We reclaim it, you know what I mean? Does that ring a bell to one of the people found on the beach? Anywho, among the items I said before, and as I said previously, they found his credit card records of him buying burner phones in these locations where he was making the calls. So if they didn't get him directly from, since he was hanging up so fast, they got him from his credit card history. And they found that these phones were used to arrange calls with 3 out of the 4 victims. They could also pinpoint that this phone or these burner phones were the phones he was using to call Melissa I can never say her name fast, Melissa Bartholomew's sister. On January 16th, 2024, so about 4 months ago, prosecutors in Suffolk County went ahead and charged Rex A. Heuermann with the death of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. They found that the DNA found on her body and she had the most damning evidence against Rex. Like the belt I mentioned previously, she was wrapped in, it had initial WH. Get this. Rex's father had passed down the belt to his son, and I guess WH was his initials, Walter or something, I don't know, Heuermann. So that was his dad's, and he used the belt that his daddy gave him to wrap one of the victims, and then they got him. Passed down the wide hips. He didn't use it. Or maybe the belt was too small, who knows? Prosecutors said that Rex carefully planned these murders because he never did them when Asa and the kids were around. It also was noted that Asa and her children were always on vacation when these murders were committed. And I feel like they found this from seeing her credit card records and seeing that she was checked in hotels at this time. It was also noted that she had stayed at Atlantic City Hotel on July 6th, 2007 through the 20th. And like I said, I feel like he planned this because he didn't want his family involved. So honestly, he's a sick freak. So based on this, they concluded that all of the 4 murders that were done by Rex were not done while Asa or the kids were home, and they could just automatically state that by evidence that, you know, she's not linked. Because at first her hair was on them. So they need to make sure that it wasn't a husband, wife duo. They had to make sure that was out. This also gave more evidence for the prosecutor that Rex is indeed a beast. Like, he planned these things. These are planned murders, first degree. Court filings also revealed that they seized 2 of Rex's cell phones. And they were actually held by him, and they were like his sex burner phones or whatever, and they were used under fictitious names just for his salacious or, you know, rendezvous activity. He would use the aliases like Andrew Roberts, John Springfield, using emails springfieldfieldman9@yahoo.com. Oh, at AOL, my bad. And Hunter1903A3@gmail.com. Oh, and Thomas Hawk at thawk080672@gmail.com. With the fictitious birthday of August 6th, 1972. Man's made a whole new personality. Rachel Duzal ain't got nothing on him. Prosecutors said that Heuermann utilized these phones to contact over hundreds of S workers between 2007 and 2023. Like I said previously, they looked at his items that were seized, his electronics, from the Massapequa home and the Manhattan office. Okay, so let's get into fine detail about what he really searched and what they really found, okay? So he looked up the deceased victims. He looked up the status of the investigation. He looked up at data wiping tools. He also purchased forensic masking data tools and other things that would mask what he was doing. Without going into too much detail, he was looking up sadistic and just torture. He was like looking up extreme things. And to add, he was also looking at child porn. And to further explain about the data wiping tools, he looked all this up in hopes that it would wipe all of that out, but they found it anyway. And he was trying to buy the software to wipe out his phones and all of his devices. Like, that's how detailed they could find. Rex scoured the internet in phrases like, how does cell site analysis work? He looked up how cell phone tracking is easily increasing being used to solve crimes. And phrases with the term LISK or Long Island serial killer. One search allegedly asked, why hasn't the Long Island serial killer hasn't been caught yet? Another one stated, why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? The court filings honestly put in more detail of all the lengths they went to get, you know, all the information about Rex. And honestly, they got the crust from the Heuermann office, and the crust was given a mitochondrial sample, and that's not eligible for court. And they said it's not eligible because you can't enter that into a national database. You have to enter a buccal swab into the database for missing cases. So this honestly could crack open so much. They're hoping that this swab could open so many of the cold cases that's in Atlantic City and that's also in Las Vegas. So I told y'all about Jody Brewer and I told y'all about Victoria Camara. But I also want to shine light on the other S workers that possibly could be connected in this case today and that I think could be connected. My opinion. Let's get into it. There is honestly more people of color, but y'all know how they don't like to cover our cases and they don't like to find us. So I feel like these possibly could be connected. Andre Jamal Isaac was a Black queer man who was also a drag performer when he disappeared in New York in 2002. Could he have been possibly seeing a client? His mother, Kim Jordan, honestly believes that the Long Island serial killer is possibly connected to her son's murder. Andre stood about 6'3" and he was 25 when he went missing in November 2002. Kim said despite her son being queer, she did not care. She loved her son all the same. Kim raised 4 of her own children and 4 of her nieces and nephews. And everybody was just all extremely close with each other. She used to suffer nightmares just regarding the gruesome details about her son's murder. Andre had vanished from his apartment in November 2002 after leaving his apartment in East New York, Brooklyn. He just went downstairs and got into a red sports car, and that was the last time they saw him. And they is according to his friends. And this is the account from his mother. Her son's remains weren't identified until a skull was discovered in a frozen lake. It was actually a pond, and it was the Mariques or the Mauritius in Long Island in January 25th, 2003. His torso was found dressed in a bodysuit and skirt, and they found it in the Far Rockaway area in Queens in December 2002, just a month after he disappeared. The coroner reported 3 bullet holes in Isaac's temples. His arms and legs were later found miles away in plastic bags. Kim said as soon as she heard that the FBI was involved, she just felt a sense of relief that she's gonna get justice for her boy. And I did not like this. Detectives were walking around Manhattan showing pictures of Andre's head, hoping that the different queer S workers or, drag performers would identify Andre. Which I'm honestly hoping they didn't flash his deceased head, but I'm sure they did because they're New York police. And it was the early 2000s. They did not respect queer people. They still don't. In May 2004, one drag queen had told detectives, "Hey, that's Sugar Bear." And immediately, they could find out who Sugar Bear was. Another performer honestly knew Andre's real name. The mother then gave police vital information. He then got in the car with the friend that the friends didn't really know, and it was on Thanksgiving. She stated and told them that he went out with the coat and he left his pocketbook. His friends said it was a red BMW and it was driven by a Hispanic man. But, sometimes racial ambiguities can be real and it is a thing. So he could have been a lighter skinned, darker skinned white male, honestly. Andre Isaac and Khalil White, Jessica Taylor's pimp, actually lived in the same area in Brooklyn, New York. People believe that there is some connection between this and the Long Island serial killer case. Like, let's be for real. It's around the same time. People believe that this could also crack open the connections of all the trans women and people being killed in the New York area and Long Island area as well. And honestly, they were saying maybe it couldn't be him because Long Island killer doesn't carry a gun. We're talking about a trans woman. Trans women are usually bigger in size. And if the person feels threatened, of course they're going to bring a gun if he feel like he can't take them down by hands. Be for real. And also, we're in New York. So he had to have access to a gun, like law enforcement or being a native or a citizen or a resident of Long Island. But this honestly makes me feel like the murder of Sugar Bear or Andre was carefully planned. Like they bought a gun with the intentions to kill. We just have leads that they just need to follow and do a good job of following. And honestly, being that this case was in the early 2000s, just the words that they label Andre as tranny and His mother says that he was just a gay male that loved to do drag. And I feel like they just equate drag with being trans and just the offensive tranny word. Like, I hate that. They were just calling him just offensive names. And they just were so ignorant. Just a gay black man just loved to do drag. That's it. People are also making connections to the black women that were found dead in Brooklyn. Kansas native Erica McDaniel was found murdered in a charred suitcase. Yes, in a burned suitcase, y'all. Under 1,000 feet away from Andre's address. She was found on March 23rd, 2013. Tanya Rush, at 39 years young, disappeared from Livonia Avenue in Bronzeville, Brooklyn. She was later found dismembered in a suitcase and dumped on the side of South Parkway on June 27, 2008. Wendy Robinson disappeared just half a mile from where Tanya Rush disappeared, and she was last seen on August 12, 2005 near Gaston Avenue in Brooklyn. Eve Brown went missing July 10th, 1999. She worked at the Queens Nassau Nursing Home in Far Rockaway, just miles where Sugar Bear's torso was found. Eve's parents actually lived in Massapequa, and her car was found abandoned in Brooklyn. Eve, like some of the victims of Gilgo Beach, was found wrapped in a plastic bag, and she was thrown off on the Belt Parkway in New York City. In September 2023, people surmised that Rex could be just the key in all of these random murders. They also feel like he was connected to the disappearance of Julia Ann Bean, a Sumter County, South Carolina woman who went missing in 2017. They feel like there is connection, but right now they are not really giving any evidence or any just saying the involvement of the case. Julia's daughter did say that she did see her mother get in the car in a dark colored truck. And she also recognized Heuermann when people showed pictures of him. But as they're trying to put the pieces together, they really don't think Rex could do this all alone. I agree, but we have to be real. This happened over 2 decades, maybe 3, depending on if we find out any links. It is possible, but I do feel like he had a team to help him and protect him. I would love to do a deeper dive on these beautiful souls of these beautiful women of color. So I will be covering them in more detail later on in a new case. Yeah. Okay, so back to the trial and back to the wildebeest at hand. They went to court on September 27th, 2023. And this is where prosecutors finally got the buccal swab that they needed. Rex also asked the judge at this hearing, he wanted to see the documents presented against him. He wanted to see all the evidence. Just wanted to gloat in the ambiance again, I believe. When Rex left the courtroom, he actually left with a smirk on his face. In court, prosecutors said they gave Heuermann's legal team up to 10 terabytes of information regarding the case. This included the subpoenas and court records of up to 8,000 pages. I'm still stuck on 10 gigabytes or 10 terabytes. So do y'all remember the West Mesa bone collector case? I'll put it up here. So I really personally feel like, and a lot of people are suspecting that he could be in connection to the West Mesa bone case. And if it's not him, then he had something to do with it or was in cahoots with the person doing with it, because it just adds up a little crazy to me. Like, it's the same time, but the only difference is this person collected bones. So that's the only difference. Today, Rex Heuermann is being charged on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder for the deaths of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He unsurprisingly pled not guilty. And regarding the other victims of who they found on Gilgo Beach, like Peaches and the other Jane Doe, or the guy that they found, they feel like Rex could not have acted by himself. So they feel like Rex did not commit these. It had to be somebody else, and it had to be an accomplice. In other words, there's no concrete evidence that connects Rex to the other bodies that were found. And right now, we just need something to stick. Okay. But this could change, being that the investigation is far from over. This is only just the beginning. In addition, New York State Police held a press conference on July 17th, 2023. I'm guessing the day he was arrested. Yes. And they noted that he was only responsible for only 3 of the deaths, and that's what they're going to push for. While spending time in the Suffolk County Correctional Facility, Rex Heuermann actually received a letter from the happy face killer Keith Jefferson. Also, let me know if y'all want me to cover that case. I believe he did a lot of murders of S-workers as well, and it seems like, ooh, that man is nuts. You can read the response letter right here. I'll either put Keith's letter or his letter. You guys can pause and read. But I'll just break it down if you don't want to. Keith basically just told him that he should go ahead and confess. You'll get more perks if you just go ahead and confess. If you tell where everything is, they'll actually cooperate and work with you. To everyone's surprise, Rex actually wrote back and he told him about the conditions in jail, saying that the yard was just walking around in a block. He was bored and that the food was gross. He also talked about how he was receiving fan mail, which I'm like, Bailey, get better idols, be for real. Prosecutors will continue to provide discovery on the case, and it is on a rolling basis. Families of the victims honestly believe that there are indeed multiple killers and not just Rex. And they're telling the police to remain vigilant and to keep your eyes and ears open. They are possibly connecting this case to the Eastbound Strangler, who the victims are Barbara Bador, Molly Jean Deltz, Kim Raffo, and Tracy M. Roberts. And they were all found dead due to strangulation near a ditch in Atlantic City. Or the Manorville butcher of the black women that I mentioned previously. So people are trying to connect the dots right now because hence is linking up. But however, after just weeks of just further looking into the evidence, Atlantic City prosecutors ruled out Rex as a suspect. So that means the Eastbound killer is still out there, and I will cover that case too. And again, Rex continues to plead not guilty. He will continue to be held without bail in the Suffolk County Correctional Facility, and his next court date his previous court date was February 6th, so last month, and there's no really update on how that went as well. The family did make a GoFundMe because they said their life turned upside down once the police came in and ransacked their house. They said they literally had no privacy, they had nowhere to sleep, and being that Rex was the sole provider of the home, bills were, slacking, and it was hard for them to eat. So they asked police, actually, could they get some of the guns back so they can pawn them to, make ends meet, and police did not respond. But getting back to the GoFundMe, another family of another killer, I'm not sure, made a GoFundMe for them to help because they went through the same thing. And I agree, sometimes the families have nothing to do with it and they get so much backlash. But I don't know, I'll set Ella up. She might know something, but she might be pulling the El Chapo. I don't know. As usual, I will be offering my tips as someone who's been in the industry for about 3 years now. For starters, make sure you do a proper screening and make sure you double check everything. Cross your T's and dot your I's, punctuate your sentences, because people out here are crazy and they feel like S-workers are vulnerable because people aren't going to find us, but we have loved ones and we have families and they're going to find you. I also believe there's different ways you can check and see your clients to see if they're on the block list or blacklist. They have different ones on Twitter and also Reddit in the different S-word communities. Next, if you're struggling with substance abuse, I want you to know that you are not alone. I'll put the resources here and also I'll put them in the description below. The first step I always say is knowing, that there's other ways to overcome. And you can do this. I believe in you. You got this. This hotline is also 24 hours, and you also can text if you don't feel comfortable calling. Next, never let your guard down and trust your instincts. I always say this, but you really do know yourself better than anyone, okay? Listen to your gut, because it's usually right. And honestly, when you feel something crazy, tell your family, tell your friends, or even tell a police officer if you have to. Last but not least, try to carry some sort of protection on you. In New York, I know you can't carry, but in the South you can. So try to, be equipped on your weaponry. Also, make sure you carry around at least an air tag, some type of identification or something so people can know where you are. I know this was in the early 2000s or the 90s or the 2010s. And precise location technologies aren't as I don't know, advanced as they are now. So I would definitely invest in them now, being that we have the access to them. You also have them on your phone. I say this a lot, but Find My iPhone or Find My is the best thing they could have made. So you honestly can find your anywhere, honestly. Put it on for a family, a friend, or just someone in the expert community. As for this case, everything is evolving and clues are being connected in this case. I really pray that each and every victim gets justice and the ones that aren't identified become identified so the families can finally grieve. Again, others say that this case is linked to the other cases in Nevada and New Jersey or New York, and they're trying to really see, are they really a true connection? Researching this case, I found a lot of information, and honestly just a lot of forums. This was a huge case in the true crime community, and it was just very fascinating to see people come together and try to, you know, get justice for these women. Rex is a very, very sick individual, and I honestly don't know the fascination with tattoos or whoever he was working with that had a fascination with tattoos, but we do know that there was some type of sick fetish with tattoos. I also feel like I stated earlier, he had a fetish for, I don't know, I feel like he struggled with his sexuality, and a lot of men do, and I feel like that's why we have these two queer victims, and I feel like we should not just completely throw them to the side and say they're not connected, because I don't know, he was there for a reason, you know what I mean? Especially with knowing his search history, let's not be obtuse. And I want people to know that sex work isn't a last resort for people. Again, some people just want to do S work because they want to. S work is so huge. It's different categories you can go into, from doming to foot doming. It's a lot you can do, and don't judge a book by its cover. A lot of times S work is the best solution for a lot of disabled people, and I think we just can't throw that out the window. We need to throw out the stigma that people in S work need to be saved. That's the stigma we need to throw out. All right, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me with another SW in True Crime video. This case was long, y'all. Y'all don't even want to know how long this was, but this was long. I'm down to 150 gig memory cards, but I did it. Thank y'all so much for watching. Make sure what am I turning to? Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know when I post it next. Comment your thoughts on this case. This was insane. And also comment what case you'd like me to do next. I'll see y'all next time in True Crime Reacts or another case, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.